Welcome to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast, where in every episode we explore what is research culture and what should it be. You'll hear thoughts and opinions from a range of contributors to help you change research culture into what you want it to be.
Welcome back to another episode of Research Culture Uncovered. I'm your host for today, Taryn Bell, and I work at the University of Leeds as a researcher development advisor. If you've listened to some of my previous episodes, you'll know that I'm really interested in the subject of failure, how we fail in academia, who we allow to fail, and how we can fail better. And after my first episode on this subject, which was all the way back in December 2024, I received an email in my inbox from our guest today, Irene, inviting me to come along and speak at a symposium focused on barriers and enablers to a thriving research culture. I was the keynote in the morning, talking, unsurprisingly, about the subject of failure, but the whole day was filled with a huge variety of talks and sessions tackling some of the major challenges and opportunities in research culture from a variety of viewpoints. It was a really interesting day and it gave attendees a lot to think about. So it makes sense for Irene to come onto the podcast herself today to discuss what she learnt from leading the symposium and to talk about some of the work going on at AdvanceHE to change research culture for the better. So I'm joined today by Ireen Litvak-Zur, who is a senior consultant in leadership and management at AdvanceHE. Irene joined AdvanceHE in September 2023 from the University of Essex, where she worked as a lecturer in the government department. Irene has a PhD in international relations from UC Davis and specialises in negotiation and team dynamics, both very useful in the arena of academia as well as outside of it. And she defines herself as a recovering academic. I've asked her to come and speak today because she brings a really interesting combination of experiences as both an experienced researcher and a consultant in the higher education sector. Welcome to the podcast, Irene.
Hi, Taryn. Thank you very much. It is lovely to be here.
For listeners who aren't familiar with AdvanceHE, could you tell me a little bit more about what their role is in the UK higher education sector?
Yes, absolutely. So if we're broadly speaking, AdvanceHE's role is to convene sectors around key challenges, to offer expertise and support, discussion and dialogue, and to work towards solving different challenges facing our sectors in the UK and globally. And when we think about this from a research culture perspective, we're thinking about the entire research ecosystem and supporting it in achieving excellence. This is part of our 2030 strategy, and this includes programs such as some of the ones that I lead, like Research Leadership Development Program, like Research Team Leadership, partnerships across the sector, bespoke consultancy, and events like our Research Culture Symposium. This is the second year that we held it, and again, thank you for being a keynote speaker on it.
Well, it was an absolute delight. Could you tell me a little bit more about what your role is at AdvanceHE? You talked a little bit about a couple of the things that you lead on, but could you give us a little bit more of an insight into what your job looks like?
Yes, I would love to. So I'm a senior consultant of leadership and management, and formerly I was a senior consultant of research. So my role is to build an offer that is aligned with the sector needs and with our strategy. This means that I'm the program director for Research Leadership Development, which is RLDP, for our research team leadership, RTL, our bespoke consultancy program, developing our member benefits with the focus on research ecosystem, and again, building various events for the sector. So I think that what is interesting about AdvanceHE is how each of our areas of focus, teaching and learning and governance and leadership and EDI, intersect with the research ecosystem. And part of my role is to identify those intersections and offer some convening and support and solutions around that.
So, as part of that, then, you convened the Barriers and Enablers to a Thriving Research Culture Symposium, which took part in June this year. Could you tell me a little bit about the overall focus of the symposium and why you chose that specific topic of barriers and enablers? Because it's a very big topic, a very broad topic potentially.
Absolutely. And you're right, it is a big topic, and it's also part of the reason that we chose. So the focus of the symposium is in its very broad sense is research culture. The goal is to bring together innovative ideas and allow fresh thinking on the research ecosystem. So when we think about research culture for the symposium, we think about new frameworks, we think about case studies, we think about applied tools, and we think about challenging existing perspectives and offer new ways to shape research culture in a more sustainable way. So this year, we heard from the higher education sector, and this was happening globally and not only in the UK, that challenges are increasing and resources are becoming more and more scarce. Now, this is not nothing new, but we see these two increase rapidly. And while we can and should raise our concerns about the negative impact of limited resources on research culture, we can, and again, I think we also should, focus on what we have and what we can do to enable the research culture that we want to have. And this is also why I was so inspired by your podcast episode on failure. It seems like such a barrier in academia at first sight, but there are tools to think about failure and turn them into drivers. So this dual focus on we see this as a failure and we could choose to see this as an enabler is exactly what we hope to bring and to challenge existing perception. So once again, thank you for delivering the keynote. I thought it was provoking and inspiring and set the tone for the rest of the day. And the feedback from the symposium also highlighted your keynote and the need to hold further discussions on different barriers and enablers.
Absolutely. And I think you make a brilliant point there that we do spend a lot of time at the moment in higher education talking about what we can't do as a result of budget cuts or as a result of people losing their jobs, of the uncertainty in the sector. And so it was from my perspective, the whole day was a really lovely opportunity to talk about what we can do in spite of that and, you know, what's getting in the way. But also, I think what was key to the day was that it wasn't just about those barriers. It was about those enablers too. So for you, thinking about the day as a whole, could you talk to us about some of your highlights from the day?
I could, and there are so many. So I hope I will not answer this too elaborately. So absolutely, so many highlights for the day. First, like I already said, it's your keynote. It sparked so many conversations, and it was reflected in each presentation and poster that followed. And for me personally, the failure bingo was a real light bulb moment. And because this is what we see versus what others see as a failure. From the feedback that we got, we heard that many of the ideas that you proposed resonated with the attendees and validated their thoughts and feelings around failure, allowing them to process it and build on it moving forward. And following your keynote, we had a plethora of innovative ideas. We heard a case study on interdisciplinary supervision, training for PGR, standardizing assessments. We talk about the impact of EDI as a nice to have versus need to have, which is key to me when we build systems and when we build research cultures, whether we treat EDI like a nice add-on or as an essential part of the structure. We explored researcher development model. We looked at how research culture looks like for independent HE providers, which I found is really interesting because we can see different structures and bring them back to how they apply to the traditional structures that we have. We talked about how fieldwork can be made accessible for diverse bodies and mind. I found it fascinating because it's very much practical. And I think this is true for the entire day. It was very much practical and not only theories and ideas that are vague. We talked about how we support research culture in developing countries. We talked about funding structures and building research leadership for the future. There were tools. We talked about leading with empathy. There was a whole toolkit around how to lead with empathy, a framework on leading in higher education, and so many practical knowledge to be applied. So I think that the highlights were in the conversations and the questions and discussions that each presentation has sparked. I always say that these spaces are biased because if you present it or if you attend a research culture symposium, you are already more invested in improving research culture than most people. So it's easier to talk about how and what to do and get inspired. But then you go back to your home environment and you face a lot of barriers. So I think that what's really important in these spaces is that they give you the support to move forward. And they offer you sharing knowledge and building networks of change makers. And then the barriers, if you allow me to be a little optimistic, then become opportunities.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I completely agree. I just think for me, one of the best parts of the day overall was the amount of practical tools and opportunities and suggestions that people were making, because I think in the area of research culture, we can often, like I said earlier, become bogged down in talking about the barriers without thinking about what the possible solutions are. And I learned so much from finding out about the research projects that other people had been doing, the things that people had been doing behind the scenes at their own institutions to try and make a difference. You talked a little bit about the challenges of the people who attend these events are the people who are already interested. So how then, beyond just using the people who do attend as a way to share this knowledge, how do you think we reach those harder to reach audiences? Can we do that?
I think that this is a great question, because this is true. We always see this. We always see people that engage and want to change and then face so much resistance to this change. And I think that I don't want to propose a solution, right? There is no one solution, but I think that a critical mass is key here. The more people want change and the more they engaged with more people and amplifying those voices, I think can bring this change and say, look, we're here to make this place better. Let's do this together. And these collaborative approaches are key.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. So thinking about changes that are being made generally as a result of the symposium, what changes or developments are going on behind the scenes at AdvanceHE?
So thank you for this question. I really love this because like you said, the key is then to go and actually make this happen. So what we always try to do is to turn ideas into actions. And after the symposium, we've sat down, we listen, and now we're working on bringing this change into our programs and our toolkits. We work with we are currently working on our member benefits for next year, which will address multiple issues around research culture and around building sustainable research ecosystems. We're implementing the ideas and practices shared in this symposium into both our open programs and into our bespoke consultancy. And we're working on the next symposium to build on the work that we have done so far this year. So this is also an opportunity to invite everyone who wants to collaborate and work together on building thriving and sustainable research cultures to reach out. We always welcome collaborations across the sector and with other sectors.
So if people want to get in touch, if they'd like to collaborate with AdvanceHE or with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
The best way to do, well, first is to reach out directly to me. And I hope people will. We have a range of events, our conferences, our symposiums. Our next symposium, we're planning this for next June. We have a range of programs around research leadership. So if you're interested, please do take a look. I lead those programs, and just come and say hi.
Yeah. Brilliant. If people weren't able to attend the symposium, but they'd like to learn more about what happened at the symposium or find out more about the speakers, how can they do so?
We are working on several outputs to cover the symposium. We are reaching out to some of the presenters to see if they will be willing to share their own outputs, and there will be follow-up blogs and recordings for you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Perfect. So Irene, to end on a more personal note as well, what's coming up next for you? What are you working on over the next few months?
Oh, that's exciting. I'm working on building an offer for our members around the research ecosystem. I'm working on developing programs around the research teaching nexus. I'm working on programs around the intersection between research and EDI, and we keep developing our research leadership programs. So a lot is going on, and I'm very excited about that.
It sounds like a really exciting rest of 2025 for you.
Absolutely.
So that's all we've got time for today. But thank you so much for joining me, Irene. It's been a delight to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Taryn. Thank you very much for the invitation. And once again, thank you for delivering the keynote. It was brilliant and inspirational. And I really hope that we will keep building on this and turning barriers into enablers.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And if you've enjoyed listening to our discussion today, I have good news for you. In a follow-up episode in about a month's time, Irene is also going to share her own experiences of failure and what she's learned from those as a part of our ongoing series on failure in academia. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to the Research Culture Uncovered podcast. Please subscribe so you never miss out on our brand new episodes. And if you're enjoying the discussions, give us some love by dropping a 5-star rating and written review, as it helps other research culturists find us. And please share with a friend and show them how to subscribe. Email us at academicdev@leeds.ac.uk. Thanks for listening, and here's to you and your research culture.